All right, welcome everyone. We're going to get going. We thank you for coming on this hot, steamy night. There's been a few folks in the back. All right, welcome to ACAP, to the July meeting. Thanks for showing up. Some of you are very familiar faces. We appreciate you coming back month after month. Some of you are brand new, and we welcome. Glad you found us. We hope that tonight is going to be helpful to you. Some more information about all the different senior resources that are available, and tonight's speaker is going to be a very interesting speaker. So we're pleased that she's here and to talk about this kind of sensitive topic of driving. So before we start that, I'm going to make sure I let you all know that this is an organization that is run by volunteers, and so I thank those volunteers who are here tonight. We've got a volunteer leadership team that continues to show up month after month, and we couldn't do that without them. So I've got Ryan, going a little wave, we have Megan, we have Jennifer, we have Becky, Leo, Bill is at the registration, so we thank them for doing that, right? Thanks for showing up. We're actually surprised that we're into our fourth event, and so this is, we're just trudging along, right? Quarter of the way in, and pleased that they're continuing to be with us. We also are pleased that we have sponsors, people who have backed us as an organization to help us turn on the lights, to make the videos work, to have the social media, the presence that we have, and the website that we have up and running. So we thank the sponsors. And so our core sponsors, I don't have anybody in the house tonight, but we have Aaron Reuben Nelson, that's Emily, Careforth, Lori Shanahan, and Centerwell. And none of them are here tonight. They all called me and said they're either on business or on vacation. So thank them. They are our core sponsors. They have said, we will be with you for the next 2 years. And they made a pledge for that process so that we actually have, again, keep the lights on and keep us rolling. Tonight, our sponsor, and so we have core sponsors who cover us for the year. We also have every program, we hope to have somebody who steps up and says, hey, I'll cover the program. And so tonight we're pleased to have senior helpers, and Josh is going to give you his, as I say, 2-minute infomercial about what is senior helpers. And so he's another resource in this community. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Like you said, my name is Josh. I'm with Senior Helpers. So ironically, I just had a little conversation with my mom. We were in North Carolina on a family vacation. She said, Josh, now that you've been in this industry for a little while, which I used to be a teacher, so I kind of transferred over into this business. And she said, now that you've been in this for a little while, what is it that you think I should do? What should I plan for? And I told her, well, that kind of depends on a couple things, because she didn't know the difference between what we do, which is home care, versus what home health is. And so I explained to her the differences there. So home health is anything that's prescribed by a doctor. That could be physical therapy, that could be occupational therapy, something along those lines. Home care is we go into the house and we help with the inordinate things like the cleaning or the meal prep or things along those natures. And our whole goal, the goal of our company, is to keep everybody that we come in contact with, all of our clients, at home, because nobody wants to leave their home. And so we want them to age at their own home, at their own level. And that is the main goal of it. And I was explaining this to her, and she still didn't really understand it. So what I did with her is we made a plan. Okay, what is the plan that you want? What is it that you want out of the next 20, 30, 40 years? And so we actually wrote down the things, and we wrote down the steps necessary when we got to those points, whether it was from a doctor or whether it was just daily things that she couldn't do herself or my dad couldn't do themselves. And we actually made a plan out. And honestly, that plan right there gave so much relief to her, so much relief to me. Because yes, if anybody goes into it and just doesn't have a plan, and doesn't know what to do, then it kind of becomes chaotic. Especially, I have 4 sisters, and they kind of run the show. I mean, if you have a lot of daughters in a house, you know they're competing for whatever it is. So, and with us creating that plan, it allowed that fighting that could happen to kind of go out the door. And especially for us at Senior Helpers, we happen to be one of the best home care facilities there are, but I didn't want to impress that on my mom or my dad. I wanted them to come to that realization on their own. So I said, I compared and contrast different home cares. What we have versus what others have. For instance, we take a lot more insurance than most. We're also CHAP certified. Now, all these things that I'm saying right now, I would love to talk to you about after. I'm trying to make this really concise and not go too deep into it. But if you have any questions about home care, what it means, how it can help anybody in the future, I'm going to be here after the presentation's done. Come and talk to me. I'll give you all the information. I'm happy to talk about options and what it is that Senior Helpers has to offer you and your loved ones. Okay, thanks for having us. It's great to be here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Josh. We thank you for stepping up and being a part of our sponsorship. So thanks for that. And again, take time after the program to talk to him. So tonight's speaker is Sherry. She works at the Brain Center, but let me give you a little of her bio. She's a certified driving rehabilitation specialist with 18 years of experience helping drivers with medical, physical, cognitive, or visual challenges. She provides comprehensive driver assessments, develops individualized plans, and recommends adaptive equipment or vehicle modifications if that's appropriate. She helps explore alternative mobility options. Sherry's leadership and advocacy in the field has been nationally recognized. She was featured in the New York Times. When it's time for an aging driver to hit the brakes, was the article. For her expertise and dedication to helping individuals and families navigate the often complex decisions surrounding driving and independence. A proud member of the Association for Driver Rehabilitation Specialists, Sherry stays current with the continuing education, emerging technology, and best practices in the field. She's deeply committed to professionalism, safety, and compassion, working closely with healthcare providers, families, and licensing agencies to guide clients through the life transition with dignity and confidence. So I welcome you to share that. Come on
All right, well, thank you all for having me come and speak today. So like Knut said, my name is Sherry. I am an occupational therapist. Started my career with Community Health Network, working at a kind of outpatient neurological clinic, so predominantly stroke, brain injury. We had a driving program there, but we had to work with a driving school to kind of coordinate everybody. So we could do an in-clinic evaluation, but we had to coordinate with the client, a driving school, and us to actually do any on-the-road stuff. So during my time at Community, I really just kind of fell in love with the driving. Ironically, a little about me as well. About 6 weeks after my husband and I got married, he suffered a massive stroke at the age of 29. So kind of gave me a different perspective of not only being an occupational therapist who worked with stroke and brain injury before I met him, to then being an advocate, a spouse, someone who literally had to guide because he spent 74 days in the hospital, had to relearn everything. So my kind of, mindset too with occupational therapy of always working too with those stroke clients, it's like, this is a lot, and so I was thankful that I was able to find kind of the driving information and everything in order to kind of guide that in my path. So it's kind of definitely a specialty. There's not a lot of us that do this job for probably multiple reasons, but I love doing it. So I'm going to kind of share today about the process for becoming a certified driving rehab specialist, what I actually do, and how to kind of have a conversation with loved ones about, is it safe for me to continue driving. It's a very sensitive conversation. It's a very hard one. It doesn't get any easier for me, and now over my 19 years of doing this, of having the conversation. I just had one earlier today where the client just stormed out of the room because he didn't want to hear that he was not safe to drive anymore. So it's something that we have to present lightly, but it kind of helps because I kind of become this outside source of like, let's see, family members each can family members are the worst, I would say, critiques of each other's driving. I drive my poor husband nuts. So it's, finding that balance and knowing these resources are out here. So I do now work for a private practice company called the Brain Center. We're actually right down the road off 82nd across from Community North Hospital. So I transitioned out of the community hospital, it'll be about 3 years ago that I joined the Brain Center, so run a whole driving program out of there. So I became a certified driving rehab specialist about 10 years ago. It is a hard specialty to do, and I had someone ask, like, how do you become this? Well, when I got certified, I had to have 1,400 hours of experience. So thankfully, I was able to build up all my hours that I was doing the driving evaluations with that driving school in order to eventually go through the certification process. So kind of that process included online training, in-vehicle training, and eventually a certification exam. So my job is to basically look at driving for each individual client. So everyone has different driving demands and driving needs versus the person who, I still drive to Florida for the winters, or I've modified my driving and I just only go to the places I need to. I avoid more of the complex environments. So it's really tailoring kind of where each person is. So my main roles, first off, let's determine if they're even an appropriate candidate. Now these are usually my young ones. So I work with all ages. I work with brand new teenage drivers with disabilities. So a lot of high functioning autism, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, anxiety. Usually kind of families, moms, dads reach out and say, we don't even know if they're a candidate. So I'll kind of go more into depth of how I kind of do my in-clinic evaluation to even determine, are we moving in the right direction? Number one requirement that the state BMV looks at, all they look at is vision. You can go in, pass the vision test, they might give you multiple tries to pass it, and then you get your license. They're not looking at anything else. They tried many years ago to add a road test once people hit a certain age, but it was axed pretty quick just due to age kind of discrimination. So they now are only looking at the visual acuity or the clearness. If someone is having difficulty with their visual acuity, they will potentially send them for additional vision, kind of screening of the peripheral vision, but the BMV is pretty lax here in Indiana of what the requirements are. Again, kind of what does driving mean to each individual person. I provide an in-clinic evaluation, which I'll go more into depth, a road evaluation, and then any follow-up services pending kind of what they need. All right, so who can I work with? So I kind of mentioned I work with brand new teenage drivers, so 16. My oldest has been, any guesses?
92. 102.
99. 99 has been my oldest client thus far. She came in ready to go. It was not good. Multiple things that we caught on the in-clinic. There had been multiple factors that kind of eventually led her into my office. But she came in, man, she was banging on that table. She was yelling all the words at me. So, she came in trying, but unfortunately the outcome for her was it's not safe. So these are just, like I said, I've done this now over 19 years. I've pretty much seen everyone within these multiple medical diagnoses. Younger ones we kind of talked about. Middle age are going to be, of course, our stroke clients, traumatic brain injuries, MS, multiple sclerosis. I see a lot of them where it's transitioning them over to potentially vehicle modifications to make sure that they're still safe to drive. And then, of course, my aging ones, we're seeing glaucoma, macular degeneration, Parkinson's disease, mild cognitive impairment, and then all multiple different types of dementia.
Do you see a lot of polyneuropathy types?
I do have some polyneuropathy, yep. Sometimes even those two, if it's more appropriate, we might be transitioning them to vehicle modifications, just because that's gonna affect, of course, sensation, their proprioception of where is their kind of foot in space. So those are ones where potentially we'll transition them. And of course, spinal cord injury, these are gonna be my ones that are eventually coming for hand control training. All right, so as we age, or if we have a medical change, things that can change, of course, number one we have to look at is our vision. All of our driving is predominantly vision. So when we look at that, as we age or have medical changes, sometimes the clearness or that acuity can change. Peripheral vision, this is a big one. So yesterday I had a gentleman that had a stroke. Pretty much wiped out the right side of his vision in both eyes. Pretty significant deficit. Those are kind of sometimes tough ones that if they have any also cognitive difficulties, the ability to compensate at the speed of what everybody's moving out there gets a little more difficult. He was able to get to the road test, but we had to really kind of modify going forward what he does. And he kind of said, whoa, I did not expect this to be as difficult as it was. So peripheral vision can definitely have a huge impact on someone's safety. Depth perception. So if someone comes in and they only have vision in one eye, well, that's all they know. I always wish I could see what these people see because they don't have the ability to have that depth perception. The people that have more trouble are ones where, again, they've had a brain injury, they've had a stroke, where now their depth perception has changed, and that ability now to judge those distances becomes harder. Contrast. So a lot of people come to me and they say, I don't drive at night anymore. A lot of it's a visual thing. So those contrasts, especially now with all those different headlights, I don't like driving at night. It's just a lot more kind of visual distracting and gets a little more overwhelming for people. And then of course, just as we all age, more of a risk of cataracts, the macular degeneration, and the glaucoma. Physical skills. So again, if someone's had some sort of medical change, it's usually going to have an impact on the way that their body moves. So typically they might have one side that has weakness, or their range of motion is limited. So we go back to my husband, he has still no use of his left side. So that's just a thing he has to manage. You know, don't forget, he calls his left arm Buddy, don't forget Buddy to bring it in the car with you. So it's those things, making sure that they can compensate for those skills. The reaction time's slow. This is probably one of the #1 things with age, is just how quickly our brain can kind of process what we need to do and how to communicate it with, whether it's our foot moving the steering wheel, all of that stuff does tend to slow down. And a big one that I sometimes see is walking, balance. People come in and they say, I just want to drive, and they're coming in on a scooter. And I said, well, what are we going to do with that scooter? Oh, I didn't think, I was like, if you want to just go through drive-thrus, that's okay. But we got to make sure that scooter can come with you. They kind of sometimes forget I have to get in to the places that I want to go. I have to do it safely. I had a lady who came and she said, you know, she had a stroke, and I said, have you worked on floor transfers? Can you get up by yourself? Well, no, I just call my husband. Okay, well, he's at work, so if you get to the grocery and you fall, what are you gonna do? Well, I'll just lay there and call my husband. Well, we may want to work on floor transfers before we start driving. So again, it's really kind of working out of what is the priority. Everyone who comes, they want to drive. I want them to drive as long as it's safe. But there are things that we maybe have to take steps to make sure, is this where we should be right now? And the big thing that changes, that a lot of people don't like to have changes, is cognitive skills. These are also sometimes the hardest things for whether it's the client themselves and family members to observe. Usually clients or family members are going to be kind of the first resource of noticing, like, hey, they're having some memory changes, or gosh, it's harder for them to multitask like they used to. So that usually kind of starts the ball of like bringing it up to a doctor and kind of talking about those concerns. So we have different types of attention. The gentleman today, his wife was like, I just noticed he can't talk to me while he's driving because his divided attention, as we discovered in the testing, was severely impaired. So his brain's ability to switch and to do that, we couldn't handle it anymore. I always kind of say, if you put all your attention in a circle, anything you start doing that takes away that, your circle starts shrinking. So if you start talking to your passenger, you're shrinking. You turn on the radio, you're shrinking. You answer the phone, well now we've pretty much have lost all of our attention on our driving, and that's when those more kind of potentially dangerous things can happen. Driving is a lot more focused on divided and selective. So our selective attention is being able to filter out distractions. So let's say you're driving along and it starts pouring. Do we focus on the rain when we're driving? No, we have to filter that out and still focus on what we need to. Of course, short-term memory. Big one that I see. And a lot of people say, well, I can remember everything I did 20 years ago. Great, what'd you have for dinner last night? We rely much more heavily on our short-term memory, especially if we're in a new area, to help us navigate. So that ability to, if you have to take a detour, because everybody's like, I take the same route every time I go there. Okay, well now there's an accident in the path. What are you gonna do? Now that road is shut down for construction. What are you gonna do? That's when then it's pulling in more of those skills that they're gonna have to rely on. Also, vehicles now have a lot of new technology. So a lot of people are like, my car just beeps at me, but I don't know why. I had one said, my car just stops for me all the time. Well, yikes. You should be stopping your car. I'm glad it's helping you, but that could be an issue. Sometimes it's harder to manage, those new technologies. I had a gentleman who came to me and he was in his 80s and he's like, well, I got a Tesla, but I only know how to work about half of the things. I always remember my dad saying, you gotta read all the manual. I'm like, okay, Dad, but now, I really understand, like, you gotta know this stuff. If you have to respond, you better know what to do. Processing speed. Number one skill that I get the most concerned when I start to see changes in this. So it is that brain's ability to take in information, process it, and figure out how to respond. Typically, when you're driving, you're not gonna have a lot of potentially crazy things. I'm looking more at those unexpected hazards. So if you have to respond quickly, can your brain do it? If you have to quickly move out of the way, can your body handle that? So in that in-clinic testing that I'm doing, I'm looking at all those skills. Decision-making, judgment, reasoning, these become a lot more in play when now we have to make that left-hand turn on a yellow flashing light, where you might have 2 lanes of traffic and a car sitting in a turn lane. So hard to see, hard to process. If that depth perception is off, that's gonna make that turn a lot more difficult. So being able to appropriately make those. Lane changes. These require more of our quick processing, our judgment, making sure, we're checking our blind spots, are we signaling, and is it safe to do those? Also, we look at just general emotional response, behavioral responses. This is a big thing I'm looking for when folks come in. The gentleman today, as soon as he sat down, I don't want to be here. I don't know why I'm here. My wife made me come here. Great, it's gonna be fun. So really kind of breaking down, this is why you're here. A lot of people, they feel like they're being attacked when they come in sometimes for a driving evaluation. So I'm really kind of saying, I'm not here looking for perfect. I know you know how to drive a car. I know you know the rules of the road. I just want to make sure your skills are where they need to be to keep you safe. Frustration tolerance. Well, this guy definitely had it. It was low. Okay, so anytime he struggled with something, anytime I gave him feedback of like, here's your score, this is the norm, he would shut down completely and just get very agitated. So you're kind of watching that. What can that do with driving? Well, that can make him a big risk out there. Awareness. Again, we're going back to that gentleman. He had no idea that his memory was as severe as it was, that his brain couldn't process. He was a police officer. So we know those skills had to be top notch. He wouldn't have been able to manage what he did. And so it was really hard for him. He just kept going back to his stories as a police officer. And I said, well, we have to look at where we are today. And this is where we are. Impulsive decision making. So this was a big one that my husband had trouble with. He didn't pass his driving test the first time he took it. I couldn't give it to him, but I was not surprised. He was very impulsive. Like, okay, we're gonna be taking this exit. Well, we're still in this lane over here. We could have planned and got over to that lane where he's just jutting off very unsafely. So these are skills, sometimes after a traumatic brain injury, things that we have to watch that can change. And then decreased activity tolerance. So I'm with folks for about 2.5 hours if we do the full evaluation. So I'm looking, are they falling asleep in the in-clinic? I had one lady that literally was falling asleep during every test. Well, I'm definitely not getting in the car with you because we can't even stay awake just sitting here. So looking at, can they manage not only getting in their car, driving, going to the grocery store, now you gotta get back in your car and drive home. So some different warning signs that people can look at, and I did bring a paper that has a nice little kind of safety checklist, and I usually encourage you to fill it out and have your loved one fill it out and see if you're kind of matching, of just, do you have any concerns about things on the road? So sometimes we get turned around. I was just in Wisconsin last week. Do we get turned around in unfamiliar places? Yes. What I'm more looking at is, are we getting turned around in places that we have driven to many times? That can be a concern. I had a gentleman where he solely had memory deficits, and I said, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna meet you at your house, and I'm gonna have you drive me to the places that you would go. His number one place he would go is his daughter's house. Great, we hopped in the car, off we went. I knew where his daughter lived because I looked it up before. We drove straight past the road where we were supposed to turn. I'm like, okay, we're just gonna see if he kind of figures it out. We just kept going. Eventually, about 15 minutes later, he's like, I think I missed my turn. I was like, that's okay, we can just get turned around, let's see if we can find it. We got to the road, and he turned the opposite way. So his ability to find his daughter's home, we got back to his house, he's like, I couldn't find it. He's like, I've been there so many times and I couldn't find it. But that increases awareness of okay, I get why you're saying that I shouldn't be driving. Relying more heavily on passengers. So this is a big one where I'll have potentially the spouse saying, well, I help him navigate, but you can't respond for him. And if their processing speed is slow, even if you were like, hey, stop, they still have to process that information. So yes, I appreciate your being helpful, and trying to keep them safe behind, but we have to look at that person's skills. I also catch it too when I'm asking, the client, I usually have family members, spouses attend the in-clinic evaluation because I find it it's a kind of an awareness builder for everyone that's there. But when you have a spouse who's constantly answering those questions for them, you really kind of see, okay, they're relying heavily on that loved one to help them. Taking a longer time to complete errands. So maybe they head out to the store and they're saying, oh, I just gotta go pick up 2 things at the store. But by golly, they've been gone for 5 hours. And then they get back and you're like, where were you? Oh, just, driving around. So if they, can't provide that information of why were you gone for 5 hours to run 2 errands, that could be a red flag. Difficulty sustaining lane position. So this kind of comes with our attention. Sometimes I'll get people where they used to drive and look around at things. Well, now they're looking at things and the car's going with them. So that ability to, again, divide that attention and multitask, we start to see changes there. Not obeying or following kind of road signs. I've been out with many people where they don't see a stop sign. Thankfully, I have a brake in my car. If it's safe, I'm gonna let them make that mistake because a lot of people will come back and say, I was gonna stop. So if it's safe, I will let them go through and be like, we just missed that stop sign. But if I need to keep us safe, I'm gonna hit that brake. Requiring more assistance for that decision making. So we kind of talked about, okay, is it safe for me to go on this left turn? Is it safe for me to make a right turn on red? Sometimes people will ask me, is it okay if I go? I want you to make that decision. So you're looking at them having to do that versus me telling them how to drive. We talked about the decisions. Again, the increased frustration or confusion. Confusing the brake and gas pedals. This is going to be more common. I get people sometimes who drive with both feet. That's how they learned. They don't want to change. I'm not going to change them if they've driven that way for 70 plus years. But I see they have a hard time separating which pedal they need to hit. You also hear, unfortunately, about the people running into buildings. These are usually these people who are accidentally hitting the wrong pedal or hitting both pedals. It's just that, again, we got to have that processing speed. And then the poor awareness. And then if they're also having potential fender bend, I always tell people, just walk around the car. Do you see any scratches? Do Do you see any dents? And then what happened there? Commonly it's like, oh, somebody hit me in the parking lot. It's always, usually placing blame on someone else, but that's a nice way to kind of check, like, we're seeing some more things on the vehicle that we might need to be attentive to. Number one thing I tell people too is, have you ridden with that loved one that you have concerns about? Or do you say, no, I'm gonna drive? Well, why? Then that's a concern, right? So if you have that, like, I don't wanna ride with them, then that's probably a reason to potentially have the conversation about driving or sign them up for a driving evaluation. All right, so how do we make sure someone is safe? So I do driving evaluations. So what I do is, recently, within the last couple months, I was able to get a couple insurance approvals, traditional Medicare and Anthem. They will now cover my in-clinic evaluation. Typically everything was out of pocket, but we are working on trying to get additional insurances to cover that first part. So I have to have a referral from a doctor, just indicating a need for a driving evaluation, just showing that it is potentially a medical necessity. Go ahead.
So with that, how frequently will they pay for it? Because let's say you take your loved one to get an assessment and they pass it.
Yeah.
Then 10 years later, like, I took that thing 10 years ago, I don't even take it again. How frequently will insurance pay for your service?
So yearly.
Okay.
So yeah, like let's say if someone, because I'll have someone who comes, and let's say they fail it, and they're like, okay, well, can I come back in 6 months? You can come back, but insurance is not going to cover it. So it's going to be a year. My documentation covers like for a year, and usually anyone who is coming, if they're coming with something progressive, I'm recommending they come back in a year, just because things are going to change. I've had people who I've seen 4 or 5 times. And there was one last year where it was his 5th time, and it was the time where we had to have the conversation. But it was nice, we had all that data to just show where his brain was to where it was that day that we had to have the conversation.
How much do those typically run?
So an in-clinic evaluation, so that's about an hour and a half, and that's $200. And then a road test, which is an hour, is $250. So my in-clinic evaluation, so folks do come into the office where I am because I have tools that I use that I can't really travel with everywhere. So they come into the office and it's about an hour and a half of testing. People call and they say, what can I study? Nothing. We can't study for our skills are what they are. Because I'll get some people who are like, I studied the whole manual. Great. I'm glad you reviewed the rules of the road, but we don't need that here. So again, I tell them, I'm going to explain everything. I'm not here looking for perfect. No one aces these tests. I'm not looking for a certain score on one certain test. I'm looking across all of them. And if we're struggling across the board, that's a concern. Again, like I said, I want family to attend because typically it's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of tests that I'm putting them through. I'd rather everybody hear it at the same time versus they walk out and the family member says, well, what'd you do in there? I don't know, lots of stuff. So at least that way we're all kind of hearing it. After that in-clinic, what's our next step? So if people generally are doing okay, then we head out on the road. So like I said, I do have a vehicle that is equipped like a driver's ed vehicle. So I have a brake on the passenger side. People ask, why don't you have a steering wheel? I've never had the need. I can easily grab the wheel and have many times, usually my teenagers. But if I need to, I can kind of grab that steering wheel. I also, now that I've done these so long, I'm usually able to kind of predict how it's going to go. So I may already have potentially a route in mind of like, okay, we're going to try this because if it goes bad, like we're working our way back pretty quick. I'm usually pretty daring, so for the most part, I'm like, let's go, let's give this a try and see how it goes. So it's, I want to give people that chance because driving is more of a routine task. It's something that they've done for many years, that even if we are starting to show mild changes, their ability to drive is usually still safe. That's why then I'm recommending, okay, let's come back in a year and check where things are. Sometimes if someone's coming and, maybe they do have neuropathy, maybe they do have the loss of one arm, we may need to then transition to some vehicle modifications, whether it's just a knob on the steering wheel. I have my amputees. They come, if they're right-sided amputees, I'm training them with a left foot accelerator. And then of course those hand controls, pending kind of what someone would need. With anyone who is doing vehicle modifications, it is not a one and done evaluation. Someone is not going to learn how to drive in 1 hour with hand controls. So those are ones where they're going to be coming for lessons. Lessons are $175. We do offer packages with discounts. Those are, again, usually my teens who are coming that parents are like, you do it. We don't want to do it. So kind of working it with them.
Do you do the modifications in-house?
So the vehicle I have, I can put in different types of hand controls.
Okay.
I have a left foot accelerator I can pop in and out, and then I have different steering devices. So everything in the vehicle I have, I can pop in and out depending on who comes to me. Once I finish their training, so like yesterday I finished with a young girl who has a spinal cord injury. So we finished training, I then guide her. Superior Van and Mobility is the main company that then takes over and modifies the individual's vehicle. They won't touch anyone's vehicle until they get paperwork from us indicating they've gone through the training. Sometimes people come and let's say, they've had a stroke and we're like, ooh, we missed some things with therapy. Ultimately therapy is we want to get you home, we want to make sure you're safe, but sometimes challenging, again, those higher level skills get lost. So I may recommend, let's try some therapy geared towards those higher level executive skills and then come back and we'll do that road test. Sometimes they drag their feet, but usually once they get done and they come back, they're like, you're right, I needed that. I needed that intense kind of program just to get my brain ready. And then like my gentleman today, we were done after the in-clinic. The last place he needed to be was behind the wheel. Unfortunately, him and his wife both drove separate. He stormed out of the office and took off. Hopefully he made it home. But again, when we call people, we say, someone needs to bring you. I've had a gentleman, the one who I mentioned, he says, my car stops for me all the time. He was not safe to drive. And he's like, well, my wife was working, so she couldn't bring me. So, well, let's call your wife. We called and she's like, oh, I thought this would happen. Okay, well, now your husband's stuck here with me and he's not supposed to drive. Well, can he just drive home? So, I heard it all. So again, it's a change, not only for the client, but also for family too. Yeah.
But what authority do you have? Because my dad lives in Ohio, and we've set this up through the Ohio State University.
Uh-huh.
He got a referral from
Yeah.
his doctor. But his doctor and the instructor told me, we don't have the authority to take his license. So the reality is, this is all helpful, but at the end of the day, he can still get in the car and drive.
Right. So, like the gentleman today, he left, he drove, he's gonna keep driving. What I do in a document I have folks sign before they come in is a BMV authorization form. My report is immediately going to the Indiana Medical Review Board. Once they see the report, the license will be invalidated. Now, are there people out there driving without a license? Absolutely. But I've documented it, and that's sometimes the main thing I tell family members is you have got to get the car off the property. Because if they're gonna see it, especially if they have memory loss, they'll go, there's my car, let's go. So, it's also then setting them up with, okay, here's our alternate options and showing them that routine can work. The biggest thing is, as soon as they hear you can't drive, well, what am I gonna do? It's a big unknown. So it's then helping navigate, okay, here's some alternate transportation options. Do we need a senior service company that provides transportation to have them come in? The wife today, she's like, well, we have long-term care. Will that help pay for, a senior service to help with transportation? It becomes steps that that family has to be willing to take. I had a gentleman, and I kind of share this story with people who come in and are out passing, where he came in with his daughter and he was not safe to drive, and I recommended that and documented it and sent it to the BMV. Well, about 9 months later, I woke up to a news alert on my phone of a wrong way driver who killed a 17-year-old. It was that man I told not to drive anymore. So, as soon as they pulled my medical records, he was in trouble.
That's Indiana though that does that.
Every state is different.
I'll have to look at
And if
that.
you want, you can grab my contact information, and I have little easier access that I can kind of let you know. But yes, every state is completely different with reporting, with anything. But in the state of Indiana, anyone can anonymously report someone to the BMV if they're concerned about their safety. Sometimes we've had to do that, where a physician is recommending the client come, we call them, I'm not doing that evaluation at all. I reach back out to the physician, what do you want to do? They are significant risk. Sometimes that office will report them or we'll report them. If they get reported in Indiana, the BMV will require them to fill out paperwork themselves, go see a physician to fill out paperwork, and they're required to do a driving evaluation. They usually give them a 2-month time frame to get everything done. If they don't get all that documentation in, they invalidate the license. They don't mess around here in Indiana. We meet with them twice a year, so they're real good at keeping up with kind of what we're doing and how to send stuff. I've had people where, we just have to make that call and get them reported. But usually the people that get the paperwork in the mail, they call about a week before their stuff is due. I got this paperwork from the BMV, I need to do a driving evaluation by Friday. Well, okay, I'm booked. So I do have a little bit where if they haven't extended it the first time, they will extend it for a month to get it done, but I say we've got to get this done. So again, that's just here in this state.
Nobody wants to call the police on their parents, but nobody wants the phone call that their parent killed a 17-year-old.
Right.
That's a feeling that I know in my industry I hear. I'm in skilled nursing and I hear families all the time. I'm equally as grateful to hear this.
Yeah.
Is there a time that she can call the police and say his driver's license is invalid, he should not be driving, I've done everything I can, it is no longer safe, and what can they do at that point?
So they could pull the person over, and they could be fined. Are they gonna take that older person to jail? Probably not.
Right.
But they could receive a fine for it. But again, ultimately, if that person has access to a vehicle.
I know my dad well enough, if it was invalidated, he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
He's just too much do the right thing.
Yes.
But in his mind, the right thing for him now is to do it.
Yes.
So, but if this is not, we're not there yet with the driver's license being pulled or whatever, we're not there.
Yeah.
But I would think the same thing when I enter that point with my parents. They don't want to break the law, but I think would have to get maybe to that. I would never want to call, but I think I eventually would have to.
Right.
And at least he would stop at that point if an authority took it. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. Well, and even I document so that one gentleman, I documented that his daughter was there at the evaluation and she heard everything I said. So can they now go to that daughter who is also the POA of him?
Sure.
Yes. And as soon as they pull that and say, well, you were at this evaluation and you didn't help encourage him to stop driving, well, now it can go after the whole family.
I have a question. Now,
Yeah.
do you know, say in that situation where that guy hit the 17-year-old and
Mhm.
killed him, what do they do with these elderly folks? I mean, it's manslaughter, which normally would be prison time.
It's typically, they go into a memory care and they don't even remember sometimes that they did it.
But what if the person doesn't have a memory issue and it was a stroke problem or something?
Yeah.
They wouldn't necessarily go to a memory care.
Right, so, and that would be, I would love to sit down with, potentially even a judge and stuff like that, of what happens to these, because you hear about, a lot of the aging clients or people who, yes, have had a stroke, and, I've told people who've had strokes, they're not safe to drive. What does happen? I'd be interested.
I will say on my end, again, I'm in the nursing home world. I do get where families come in that their hand was forced by the police saying, if you don't do this, you are now liable because you know this is happening in the home. The house will burn down and you are personally liable and you have to make a decision. And they will then sometimes, honestly, that's why some of this, we started this non-for-profit. People weren't getting information ahead of time.
Right.
And then they end up in my world and I'm going, they didn't know, let's teach them.
Right.
But it literally will get to that point. Hamilton County is very aggressive with that.
It's a
They are
nine
very,
Hamilton.
when the fire department shows up over and over, they even do it in the assisted living. They're going, it's $1,000 fine every time you show up. You're wasting resources.
Yeah.
You do it again, and so I'm hearing that more often. They'll literally, in a good way, I think it's good. It
It's
kind of
educating.
forces us as a child to, I've got to make a move now.
Well, Ryan, I've had the opposite happen in my building where families took the keys away because they didn't feel it was safe to have them administered. And the police came back and took the key, gave the keys back.
Oh, wow.
It's education.
So both ways.
Yeah, you know, people don't know what, I mean, even like me, like, people don't even know we exist
That's true.
until you come to a presentation,
Yes.
until a physician who knows, but it's ever changing. Even the therapists where I used to work, like, they're new and they don't know, and so it's, you know, educating these about these resources that people, unfortunately, there's a lot of them that people don't know. Yeah.
You need to be on the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah. The 4, the 5, the 6, the 10, and the 11.
Hey, you get me on there, I'll do it.
Seriously.
So you can do some of this progressively. I had a friend that had Parkinson's disease and we were concerned about his driving. So we didn't tell him he couldn't drive. We just happened to, hey, I'll pick you up on the way to lunch. I'll pick you up on the way to golf.
Yeah.
You know, and what we did with my father-in-law is I actually disabled his car. And then we were able to take him around places. And then when you do that for long enough,
Yeah,
it
and that's,
becomes a pattern. And then he got out of the habit of trying to drive because everyone was just there to pick him up.
because he
It's a
knew,
commitment, but-
I'm gonna get to these places,
Right.
and that's the thing, is to show them, because like I said, that initial shock, they shut down. Yeah.
So instead of saying taking away the car keys, say, I'm gonna give you a gift certificate for Uber. You
Yeah,
know?
or for Go-Go
Or-
Grandparent,
and
which I'm gonna
pretend
talk about.
like you have a chauffeur.
Right,
You
and
know,
that's
if you have
that'll be
senior
kind of where I go
persons
into of
or
how
high
do we help with that and
Right.
still maintain their dignity and everything. So we've kind of talked about the road test. They do use the vehicle I have. I'm not hopping in anybody's car and hoping for the best. I always tell people, like, hey, if you had a rental car, are you just gonna say, nope, it's not what I drive? No, you're gonna get in that car and you're gonna adapt. And so I tell people, like, if you hit the brake too hard, the gas, like, don't stress. I'm more of looking at your actual driving skills, okay? And again, I vary the routes depending on if someone doesn't go on the interstate anymore, I'm not putting them on it. I try, if someone's doesn't live too far away from the office, like, I'll meet them at their house and again, have them drive me to the places that they would go to get a real good memory assessment. All right, so we kind of talked about recommendations. If someone does okay, like, off you go. You're safe to drive, but if we have something progressive, let's follow up in a year. Sometimes I make recommendations of, let's maybe avoid the interstates if we're seeing some slowing in processing speed. Let's maybe just travel at daytime. A lot of older people, they've already kind of started modifying some of those things, and they come in and they said, I don't do da-da-da-da-da. Great, I appreciate that, because that shows you're aware.
Do restrictions show on a driver's license?
So they can if we report it to the state. A lot of times I've found though that they don't go and follow up with getting those things. We can put all that stuff on there, but again, they have to actually go and get that updated. Avoiding rush hour, that's a big one. Time constraints, maybe you go, like, if you're retired, you've got that flexibility to potentially go from like 10 to 2 when it's maybe a little bit quieter. Sometimes people ask, is there a radius restriction? There is, but I don't know how far 5 miles is. There's no bubble that pops down and whoop, you hit your radius, turn around. So that one I find is much harder for people to kind of follow that one. We talked about returning for reassessment or having the conversation that it's time to stop. All right, so how can we transition the driver into a passenger? So like we talked about, a lot of drivers as they're aging do start to kind of modify some of their driving abilities. They drive shorter distances, they avoid the interstates, they avoid the rush hour, they avoid bad weather. My caseload with my older clients definitely drops in the winter just because if there's a little snow, like, I wouldn't go out in it, fine, that's fine, we'll reschedule. I appreciate you recognizing, like, I wouldn't do it, so let's not test in it. So having the conversation is not always fun. Like I said, I hate doing it every time. Now that I've done this so long, I pretty much know if I'm gonna have it as soon as I get that client in the room. So I'm already kind of, again, as I'm, developing rapport with them and talking with them of like, okay, they could take this. I thought for sure the gentleman this afternoon was gonna yell for the whole office to hear. But he just stormed out and left, which, was also fine. But again, you don't know how these people are gonna kind of respond. And I take that into consideration because it's a big deal. It's independence. And it's not a fun, conversation of hearing, you can't do this anymore. The main thing is, you gotta start early. This guy today, he's too far. We're gonna be in an argument, him and his wife, of dealing with this conversation. So begin discussing before it becomes the crisis, where they are in now accidents or they don't have awareness of their deficits. It's gonna be harder to have that conversation. Talk about it as an aging process. We're all aging, right? We're all gonna be having these changes. So normalize it as like, this is gonna kind of happen, to everybody out here. Hopefully when it's my time, I'm like, okay, I understand, and not be like, do you know what I used to do? I'll be that mean person out there who's gonna tell everybody what I used to do. Try and do it as like a dialogue, not just we're gonna sit down, we're gonna have this conversation, and everything's gonna be decided right now. It's not. It's gonna be a process. Like we said, it's setting up, what are our other options? What are our things to show, like, okay, we can do this transition, but we're gonna have to do it together. That's also, they need to have that support. Because yes, if it's just one person saying, okay, you have to do this, it's probably not gonna happen. Choosing the right setting. So probably shouldn't have it in the middle of the grocery store if something happened on the way there. It's kind of having that quiet time where, okay, maybe they do better in the morning. Maybe they do better in the evening. Kind of finding that time. Also having family members there that they trust and that they understand. Again, like I said, don't have it right after an accident. They're not gonna wanna hear it. Same thing with my 10-year-old, when he's in a mood, we're not gonna be having a constructive conversation right now. We're gonna have to wait until he calms down and has that time to process. And again, you want those family members so they know they have a team behind them. Where sometimes it's like, oh we've got a grandchild who just got their license, great. They can help be a resource. And I say, this is your time to spend more time with your family. I know it doesn't seem like it, because we're taking away something, but this is also a way we can look at it as I get to be with my family more. Acknowledge the loss. It is a loss. It's not only a loss for that client, it is a change for spouses, for children, because you're gonna have to step up. If you're saying, okay, well you can't do this anymore, but good luck, figure it out, what are they gonna do? They're gonna drive. We all wanna drive as soon as we can, we wanna hang on to it as long as we can. So it is something that you've gotta approach lightly. People are gonna be, and I tell them, you have every right to be mad, to be sad, to be frustrated, because this is a big deal, and it's literally, if you have that conversation and they're understanding those things, I've had people completely break down in the middle of the office. I had a gentleman when I first started the Brain Center about 3 years ago, where he was in his 50s with early onset dementia. He was a physician. His wife's out in the car crying, saying, I didn't think our retirement was going to be like this. He's in my office crying because his brain is not what it used to be. So it's pulling in those family members and saying, okay, you still can do, these things with your family. We just have to kind of tweak and make sure we're doing them safely. Yeah, it's not gonna be okay, I won't drive anymore. It's gonna be a roller coaster, and it's gonna be, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have days where it's like, oh my gosh. But again, if we're saying like, no, we've gotta make sure that their access is limited. All right, so we wanna make sure that they are still having their independence, that they don't become, because number one thing I hear is, I don't wanna be a burden, I don't wanna ask for help. Top two things. And so again, as we're having this conversation, I'm pulling in those people that are also in the room with us. Because a lot of them will say, like, we're gonna figure this out versus getting a call saying you've been in an accident or we can't find you. You know, I've had 2 people where I said no driving and they were silver alerts. You know, so those things can happen, but again, if we have that support, so I'm gonna get you there. So again, it's knowing, like, I'm gonna get to golf. I'm gonna get to coffee with friends. I just have to do it a different way. What I usually tell folks is get a big calendar where, you know, if there's certain things, put the event on there, put who's driving them, so that they know, okay, I've got these things and this is how I'm getting there. So then they have that more of that comfort of like, this is gonna work. Making sure they're just staying still engaged in their activities. You know, the people come in that have all those different things, that hobbies that they enjoy doing, we gotta make sure that they're still able to maintain that independence in those. And have them kind of sit there and explore what are those options. All right, so gotta develop a plan. So easiest plan is, okay, who can we have? Do we have a spouse? Do we have children? Do we have grandchildren who can kind of come together and say, okay, we're gonna do these things and we're gonna figure it out together. Rideshare services. So of course we've heard of Uber and Lyft. Well, that requires the use of a smartphone and to figure out the app, and I don't know how to use the phone. GoGo Grandparent is the middleman between Uber and Lyft. So this was designed years ago by a gentleman in California who wanted to help his grandmother. Nice thing with GoGo Grandparent is you call a number after everything's kind of set up. They set up the ride for you. Your family member or whoever's listed as a kind of safety, emergency contact gets notified, hey, they're heading to Target. This is the driver, this is the license plate number, so that you know, okay, well, Dad's going to Target and this is who's taking him. When he's done at Target, calls that exact same number, they know where they dropped him off, pick him up, take him to another destination or home. So this becomes where you don't have to mess with that app anymore, you just call the number. Nice thing about GoGo Grandparent, they've also added grocery delivery, prescription delivery. If we had to have one good thing out of COVID, it is more of those resources for having things delivered now. Senior community transportation programs. So again, we're looking at those senior services programs. Finding, if you have that long-term care, will that help cover where we can get a service that comes in? That also is going to give them some consistency. And they might develop a nice friendship with that person. Oh, hey, Betty's coming today and that's who takes me places. So kind of having that more of a routine person. Of course, different counties, of course, have transportation. So Hamilton County does have their Hamilton County Express. Requires a little bit more planning though. So these kind of top ones are gonna be, a little bit easier to access versus like, okay, I have to schedule this in a week in advance to make sure I'm getting there. Public transportation, not the best in Indiana. Just move on from that. Volunteer driving, programs and things. Again, we don't have the greatest options here in Indiana. I wish whenever I had to tell someone they couldn't drive anymore that I could just give them a little person and say, here's your driver. Because we don't have the resources here to help with that. I hope too, as just more people are aging, that this is something that can become more common. And then we talked about the grocery, pharmacy, and meal delivery services. So it's an adjustment. They've got to become comfortable. And sometimes I'll say, well, now is your time to look at all the things out and about. Go find a house you like as you're driving along. Give them things to kind of look for so that they can enjoy being, that passenger. Allow them to choose the route. So maybe they always like to take a certain route to get to the grocery or to get to their doctor's office. So allow them, which way do you want me to go? Let them have some active engagement in that driving process. And then knowing they still may critique. You are driving. This is a hard thing to turn off. And that was a big thing for me to learn as I started doing this job. No one's gonna drive like me. Everyone's gonna drive a little differently. You're gonna have the late stoppers, you're gonna have the people who hug to the left or the right. It's kind of finding, what does each person kind of do themselves, and is it safe from their standpoint? And then again, it's maintaining their engagement in those activities. So then just wanted to include some kind of resources, and I don't know if they're the best way to share this presentation too, but we can kind of talk about that. But the first one here is a link or website that was generated by a student that I had years ago. She went through every county in the state of Indiana and documented all the transportation alternate options within every county, who they're geared towards, if there's a cost, what kind of services they help with. Also on this, she did some little kind of testimony. She used GoGo Grandparent. So she actually kind of signed herself up and had them take her, and she did a little kind of presentation on how it worked for her. There's also some different diagnosis, like fact sheets on there, and also how to find a driving rehab specialist. This is the GoGo Grandparent link. So again, they have an extensive website page. Again, this is something where people are usually going to need help kind of getting this initially set up. They have different programs where, okay, we might use them 2 times a week. You can kind of adjust potentially how you want to set that service up. ADID, of course, is our organization for Association for Driving Rehab. So I'll get people who will call and say, hey, especially when I was in the article at the New York Times a couple years ago, I had people calling from New York, I had people calling from California, like, hey, do they have you here in California? I'm like, well, you can come and see me here, I'll fly me there and I'll do the evaluation myself. But this is a way to find those of us who are certified in all the different states of Indiana, or of all the states in the US. Indiana actually has a pretty good amount compared to, like I said, I was just in Wisconsin last week and I looked it up just to see, like, hey, if we moved here, there's only 2 for the whole state of Wisconsin. 2 certified driving rehab specialists. The Hartford is a very nice resource that has lots of things about having the conversation about driving. They also have these guidebooks that you can order for free. They're just a nice resource. They talk about comprehensive driving evaluations. They talk about new technology in vehicles. They talk about having that transition to becoming a passenger. So this is a really great website that I have some of the guidebooks in the office that I'll share with people. And kind of the main thing here, driving is one way that we can maintain our independence. That's the trickiest thing that people, I've heard well, if I can't drive, my life is over. That's, yes, very dramatic. Let's figure out how we can still make you independent if we can't do this one thing. So I don't want to take away anyone's independence. That's not my goal. I don't want people to come in, trust me, if I had to tell people every single day, every hour of the day, you can't drive, I probably wouldn't do this anymore. I want people to be out there. I want them to be safe. And sometimes it's just going through and reviewing some things that have changed. Roundabouts. They kind of popped them everywhere and they didn't really educate people on them. So again, it's educating about these new rules. I wish that people had to do kind of a recap of things at a certain time when they go to renew their license, just because the skills change. And so we kind of, we talked about, we got to do it together. It's a family process. It's not just that client. All right. Any questions?
Just a thought.
Yeah.
I was told after this, I had a grandfather that was a veteran, and we were driving him constantly as he had cancer. His legs were swelling. He did get in a car accident. We went through all of this. That the VA will do transportation to the doctor's appointments. And I didn't know that. There's a lot of resources that are not shared out there. This is another reason why we did this. There's so many programs that there's not a booklet. If you have a loved one that's a veteran, talk to people. There is just so many resources that it drives us crazy that it doesn't get out there. I mean, things for their home, to go to assisted living, for transport, and normally by the time they come to me, it's gone too far and they didn't even know about it. So just red alert if they're a veteran. There's so many things out there.
One community, I don't know if you guys have ever seen something called Mabel's Ride. So Community Health Network, it's called Mabel's Ride, where they will provide transportation for people to go to therapy, to go to some medical document. It used to only be like cancer patients, but they realized, well, there's more people than just people who have cancer that need this service. So that is something that community does as well. Yeah.
Is there any kind of technology available that would restrict someone from starting the car? Like if their fingerprint doesn't?
It's a good question. Sounds like something you need to invent.
I'm on it. No,
Okay.
I mean, it could apply to young people
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
have access to mom's keys in the middle of the night. And it can apply to mom and dad, where only dad's fingerprint registers, mom's doesn't. And it can't.
Yeah.
I pulled the starter fuse out of my father-in-law's car.
You'd be surprised. I've had
And then
some
just
pretty
figured
crafty
it was good,
people
and then
though.
whenever we needed to drive
Oh,
his
yeah.
car, I would just pop in.
Yeah, I had one though that the family did stuff, but they went to the neighbor and they're like, okay, my car's broken again. And the neighbor, well, there we go, off you go. So it's also making sure if you're gonna do something that they don't have a relationship with someone who can fix it for them.
Are you, I know there's self-driving cars now, and that's probably a really hot topic, but I can see this becoming a bigger and bigger thing. I personally have a self-driving car, and it's not perfect. Is there anything that you would say about this? Are you seeing, you said there was a person that had a Tesla.
So the number one thing I say about the self-driving cars now is I wish there was a way you could make sure that that person still has to drive the car a couple days a week. Because what's the saying, if you don't use it,
You lose it.
you lose it. So if people are not challenging their skills to have to make a judgment call on an intersection, to sustain their lane stability, well then, okay, I'm just gonna let the car do everything for me. I had a young girl who had a stroke, who had vision deficits. Her boyfriend worked at a car dealership. He's like, I'm getting her a Tesla. And I'm like, but she still needs to know that if that Tesla didn't respond, that she can still drive that car. I said, she needs to go through this. Well, she went through some lessons, but then he got her the Tesla. He's like, it's just gonna drive for her. I'm like, okay. I can only do what I can. So, you know, I wish just, as long as people have it, you gotta still keep your skills up. Go ahead.
So I just want to share something. I live in a residential area that has four-way stops and people are running them because they don't see any other cars.
Yeah.
I wonder if in fact they have not become habituated to doing roundabouts, and when they do roundabouts and we get into our habit pattern and you don't see the stop sign any longer,
People
you
are
don't
just-
see another car.
They're also sloppy now.
Yeah.
People have, I've noticed
Yeah.
after the pandemic, there's a lot more aggressiveness,
Totally.
recklessness. No one has patience anymore, and there's a
Right.
lot of sloppy driving.
Right.
I see, every time I'm working with one of my new drivers, they're like, well, they didn't stop. They didn't do this. No one uses a signal.
Doesn't matter.
Everyone does rolling stops. It's bad. So again, it's just people they get sloppy and they just do whatever they want to do. Yeah.
So can I add one more thing?
Sure.
So, I'm in my 80s, and so my friends, my peer group, we all are not driving at night because, number one, not that we can't, but because of exactly what you talked about. Yeah.
Just a brief comment about Go Grandparent. We did not have a good experience
Okay.
with them, and so you'll want to read the fine print and understand. There's a requirement to pay a monthly fee, and there's no service that comes along with that. It's just a monthly fee, and then on top of it, the per ride is higher price point than Uber or Lyft. So understanding that. And in our experience, it was a 25% correct pickup rate. So no shows, going to a different house, and we've used Uber and Lyft with much, much more success. And with Uber or Lyft, you can advance schedule, way out, so you can schedule known trips, and that can be really helpful for not having to go into the app in the same way. They still have to know how to use use it.
Right, because we had a gentleman where his wife set him up to get to the office, and then he's like, I don't know how to get
Yeah,
home. Yeah,
need to know
so-
the other direction, or have a time to return
Yes.
back, but, that was just our experience with Go.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, it was.
I feel like too, a lot of, I mean, I wish they had Uber and Lyft drive, like I wish they had them go through a driving evaluation. I mean, I hear some horror stories of like these people who are like Uber drivers and stuff like that. Like, you know, some of them, you know, some don't speak English, some don't, you know, so you don't even know sometimes what you're getting there. Yeah.
You can sign up also on Uber or payment account, so it's just one pay, and I set one up for my mom who she's recently stopped driving. And
Yeah.
that was really helpful for her. She has not one time yet asked me to do it, but she had that same sort of perspective. I don't want to be a burden. I said, this is not a burden, and all you have to do is let me know, text me, whatever, tell me, or like you said, schedule. And it just goes on one account, and then you also can track the ride and when you get picked up. All of that.
The other nice resource to
You
have.
have to communicate with the driver.
Yes. The other nice resource is that Life 360. You know, if you do have, you know, your loved one where, you know, having that is helpful. You know, my mother-in-law had a, you know, transient global like amnesia event where she literally just lost the ability to form. I think somebody in the news just recently had that, where you lose the ability to create. Yes, you lose the ability to create memories. You can still completely function, but you're not making any memories. And that happened to her, and she was sitting in a parking lot, and thankfully we had that on her phone because she was so confused. And I'm like, literally, just stay where you are. I'm gonna come and get you, and you know, took her to the hospital. But those are nice resources to have if something happens.
What was that, Life 360?
And then in the back, I do have, so just kind of a little flyer about me, some business cards. I do have a little kind of safety checklist, and then I do have a document that is like driving as we age, kind of talks about what changes, how to keep people safe. If you're looking, I have one actually for like every medical diagnosis. So if that's something you're looking for, you can shoot me an email, and I can share that with you. Yeah.
So at the beginning, when I was talking about where I had a conversation with my mom about it, it all started because she was driving me from, well, she started driving me from North Carolina back to Indiana. And it came up because she said, I don't want to drive at night. And so we started talking about my dad, who, I missed the first 15 minutes because I had a phone call with a client, so I apologize if we already talked about this, but she had mentioned, and I agree with her, that there's no way anybody's going to stop him from driving. And he's just of that old school mindset to, he can do it.
Yep.
He'll figure it out. What do you do in those situations? What have you done? And besides just have multiple people tell them, because
Can you watch the recording? No, I'm kidding.
I'm guaranteeing you've already talked.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because like I shared, you can report them to the state in Indiana, or all states have some sort of reporting thing that will invalidate the license eventually. But I share too, like there are people out there who I've recommended not drive, reported in the BMV, they don't have a license that are still doing it. So it just becomes a liability thing if something happens.
GPS, my dad's car has that ability. To me, that would be worse. Even, I would rather him get lost than be distracted by that technology that he does not use on a regular basis. So my feeling is there any point in teaching him?
If they have any memory deficit, they're not gonna be able to learn anything new. What I say too though, like the only thing I would potentially say is, could they hit a home button to get them home? Don't show them anything else. Like if you had to pull up that GPS and you have a home link already there, can they hit that home to then navigate them home? But anyone who's coming with any sort of difficulty with new learning, you're not gonna get
Wow,
anywhere.
I never would have thought that, but now it makes sense even
Hey, Bill, share your story.
the distraction from it. I've seen this with my father that functioned at an extremely high CEO level, but now is having difficulty with just all the navigation and what road. I'm like, hit the navigation. But I'm seeing it starting. I actually reached out to Canute to get some advice before having a conversation. That's interesting. I never would have thought
Well, it goes
that.
along with what
It is a
you were
distraction.
saying about multitasking.
Too many things.
It's too many things.
Well, they do
And
do
at this
it.
age, it's really gonna, it's not part of his world.
I appreciate you saying
I don't think it's a big
mother-in-law, she is 78. So my wife set up her phone to get to the doctor's appointment, and she just had to hit the button back to go back from the doctor's appointment to the house. Long story short, she didn't hit the button to go back. So she's driving on the street and she pulled over. She called my wife and said, "Hey, I can't get home, but I'm irritated because this blue dot is following me around." So just scroll up a little bit, hit home, and that blue dot will go. Yeah, technology component.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Well,
Right.
I've been doing this for 20 years, and this is a topic that I didn't know enough about, and I really appreciate you doing this.
We apparently are blessed in this community to have Sherry and what she does, so we thank you for that.
I'll hang out in the back for a little bit
Yep.
if anyone has any personal
Please hit
things.
her with questions. So just a couple announcements. One, you've got a 6-month flyer. We're gonna keep going for another 6 months until the holiday. So look up what we've got next week. Next month is the importance of staying socially engaged and active. Kind of like we talked about the independents are taking that away, right? How do we stay connected? Friends. Loneliness is one of the hugest issues that we have for the seniors. So how do we build into that capacity of social independence and engagement and activity? So come on back. September, Medicare and SHIP. We'll have Bruce in here talking about the whole Medicare world. And it's a great presentation, so I've heard that before. Second, so here you've got your check-in for who's checking in is the next month, August. And then there's a senior fair coming up. August 19th is a Wednesday, 10 to 1, down at United Methodist Mid-North, so 38th and Meridian, are in the big corner of that big kind of Gothic church. It's gorgeous on the inside. We'll have about 40 vendors there with a variety of different senior resources, all free. It's available for you. Just another resource again, trying to give you those opportunities to engage, to talk to folks like Josh and Sherry and everybody else that we can bring into these affairs, these places to come and again enrich educate us, right? And so even those of us who've been in this field for quite a while, this is all new learning for us. Last month was great. This month is great. So we thank you for coming. Yes.
Yeah, I can't be here next month.
Yep.
I want to put a plug in for the speaker who's coming next month. She's on faculty over at the University of Nashville. She's a certified life therapist, and she's a pretty much an expert in social isolation and the aging process. And so I think you will absolutely love her.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
Can't be here.
Looking forward to it. I also know that there's a real interest. I saw a lot of you taking pictures of the frames of the PowerPoint. I will try to work on. I have that presentation. I'll try to get it with our tech folks to send that out to. So if you showed up today, we should have your email. We will then ship that out to all of you who came.
And then it's recorded. So
and it also
the
will be.
reason why we did this
Yep.
in our world, we get somebody and then it's not recorded, and we're trying to gather the people that actually know the information better than anybody.
Yep.
How do we tell people where to get that recording?
So what will happen is, again, it's our tech support, right, that we've purchased. I just looked today online. We have our first April event has been posted. So they're going to continue to post these. And so just keep looking for them. But at least we have one up. Now we'll work on the other 3 and try to catch up here. All right? So that's the goal. The goal is to then have these posted so we can look at them again and review them and have that opportunity. Okay? Thank you for coming. Be safe, and we'll see you next month.